So next up, we got Miko from Gumi. Gumi is a fund that's been actually quite reputable over the years. They're actually going to share something very interesting about VR and NFT. So please give Miko a round of applause.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So just a really quick note, I'm really giving a short bio just because, why are you listening to me? So, GCC, Gumi Crypto's Capital, we actually deployed a $21 million fund straight into the bear market of 2018, right? So we're ultra high conviction. We love this space. We want to support. Out of that bear market, we were the lead investor in the seed stage, strategic seed stage of OpenSea. We did a seed stage investment into Yield Guild Gaming. We definitely are very committed to this space. We love NFT. My partner in Tokyo actually launched a pure play virtual reality venture fund. He also called Venture Reality. The other one that he launched was 3 separate gaming funds, right? So, we've got basically 3 gaming funds, 2 blockchain funds, and 1 pure play VR fund, right? So I think this is terrain that we know and love. We're very excited about this. And the theme of my talk today is what I call occupying Meta Street. So, as you all know, we're in a pretty serious bear market right now already. One of the things that happened in 2008 was the collapse of Lehman Brothers, right? So shortly after, this kind of Lehman Brothers collapse, a bunch of basically degens took over Wall Street, right? So they just physically moved themselves in, bunch of anarchists, folks wearing a lot of black, kind of like myself, basically hanging out in Wall Street, in a rebellious oppositional mood, right? So these are kind of, in a sense, like the first degens, right? And in September of 2008, we saw the collapse of Lehman. And actually in October of 2008, we saw the publication of the Bitcoin white paper. And it's actually reputed that Satoshi favored the color orange for Bitcoin to celebrate Halloween. So I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what's been said, right? So Bitcoin's orange because of Halloween, but you have to understand that the Genesis block of Bitcoin contains a newspaper headline about bank bailouts. Interestingly, in the Times of London newspaper. So this is all reactionary, but the reason I'm talking about Bitcoin in the first place is Bitcoin is the birth of blockchain technology, right, in opposition of banks that were too big to fail, right? And the idea that there was an occupation of Wall Street is essentially a degenerate and defiant approach against these institutions, right? So we're really trying to disintermediate the institutions, and we're occupying what I call the meta street, right, which is the next layer from where we are. So to define terms, one of the terms I saw defined well on Twitter was the metaverse. So one way to define metaverse is valuing of the digital symbolic over the physical, right? So if you think about it as the metaverse as a statement of value, then it's really interesting to kind of contemplate value as something that is it's a more of an abstraction, right? It's a symbolic abstraction layer. I think this is an important principle because I think people who oppose blockchain technologies tend to argue on the basis of something called intrinsic value. If you find yourself in an argument where someone is invoking intrinsic value, just walk away. Just leave the room, right? Because it's clear that that person has not understood very much of anything, right? Which is the concept of intrinsic value is it's a real thing. It's a thing used in accounting. It's an accounting term. It has an accounting meaning. People imply that it has a real meaning, but I can tell you, for example, let's say, what is something with an intrinsic value, right? So you can say, air has intrinsic value, right? Not if you're trying to hang yourself, right? Then you don't want the air, right? So my point is it's all situational, right? So the idea of valuing the symbolic is something that we all do every day, all day. So let's get right to the why, right? Which is, people ask, like, why would you occupy Meta Street? What's the point, right? Because the point I'd like to make is the metaverse is generally referred to as a spatial domain, right? In the sense that it's embodied. So that's kind of the distinction, right? If you think about cyberspace, right? The internet birthed this area called cyberspace. So what is cyberspace? Cyberspace is where you are when you're writing an email, right? So where are you? You're somewhere, right? But you're in a kind of a more disembodied space, right? You're writing the email, you're really thinking about the person who you're writing the email to, so you're somewhere, right? You're in cyberspace, right? But the difference with the metaverse is that you're in an embodied space. So in an embodied space, like, it's you and you're physically moved into this space. But I think the thing that people have done poorly is they've done a poor job explaining why. Why would we move into this embodied physical space? I think people say that it's kind of novel, like it's cool, it's new, it's interesting. That's not enough. That's not enough, right? Because we're supposed to go to the metaverse to live, work, play. We're supposed to go there, right? But it's new and novel. Like, human beings are subject to something called habituation, which means after a couple weeks of doing anything, you kind of completely habituate to it and it becomes normal, right? So the idea that something's new is not a good reason to do. It's a good reason to try something. It's not a good reason to do something. So I'll give you the reason. The reason for the metaverse has to do with belonging. Right? And the thing that's really interesting about the principle of belonging is that what should we expect to see when we occupy Meta Street is we should see our stuff. We should see our loot. We should see our punks. We should see our NFTs. We should see our friends. We should see our family. We should see our land. We should see all of the things that we belong to and all the things that belong to us. Right? That's the why, right? So I feel like that's something that hasn't been done well, and we have a lot of building to do. I mean, I think obviously bear markets are for builders, as the previous panel said, right? So, it's very important now that we build all of this infrastructure. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was degeneracy, right? Because in essence, the idea of Occupy Wall Street is a revolutionary and effectively degenerate movement. One of the things I said in NFT LA was I was talking about degen culture. So degen culture isn't, I'm gonna cut myself. Degen culture is, watch me cut myself, right? So degen culture is sort of self-destructive. It's adolescent, it's oppositional, right? So it's really this kind of like, you boomers own everything physical. We would like to own something that you all won't even understand, and if you saw it, you would recoil in horror, right? That's degen. And what I want to say is, where we're going, we won't need degen because you oppose something because you want it to go away. But what you resist persists. And where we're going is better infrastructure. It's just going to be better. If our system is better and it wins, we don't need degeneracy. We don't need defiance. We don't need any of those things. Our stuff is just going to be better, right? So that's really kind of core thesis level things. Now, I guess kind of the final note that I wanted to end on is that in a way I feel like we're building towards a fairly optimistic future. I think that the thing that humans can't exist without is hope. So we're all hopeful. I feel like really the linchpin that governs whether we have a more hopeful future or not actually is the availability of carbon-free energy. I know this may sound like it's about to be a sales pitch. It's not. I'm really just saying that, to me, one of the promising technologies is something like nuclear fusion. Because the reason why all these things matter is even if you look at something like Bitcoin, Bitcoin is an energy-backed currency, a lot like the US dollar, which is if you fly into Saudi Arabia, if you fly into Riyadh, you're going to see the palace, right? You're going to see probably one of the last kind of authoritarian monarchies left on the planet. And next to it, you're going to see a US Air Force base. And as you all know, the US dollar is the demand currency of OPEC and of the Saudi oil regime, right? So not to get political, but all I'm saying is that the dollar is backed by energy and weapons, right? But Bitcoin isn't free of energy either, right? Bitcoin is backed by electricity. So to me, I think, this is a little bit of an aside, but for us to transcend these kinds of basic kind of squabblings that we have, we definitely are going to need a new clean energy future. But I think if we do have that, we will be able to move to a world where we are valuing the digital symbolic over the physical. And at that point, we'll be able to occupy Meta Street. So that's it for me. Thanks so much.